Welcome to the Derek Diamond Experience podcast, where every week I take a look inside the world of film and television with those who have lived it and experienced it. Coming up a little bit later on in the show, you'll be hearing my conversation with actress/model/producer/writer Victoria Vertuga. Actually, the first interview that I'm putting out on this podcast in quite some time. But first, we are discussing comedies. She's actually going to be promoting her new web series called Disgraced, which is kind of a satire on the inner workings of the film industry. So I thought, why not, as a nice little tie-in, do top 10 comedy films? Because I think, and as I see in the chat, we've already got a few people watching. Carlos Longoria, he says, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Carlos. Fun and looking forward to see what Double D thinks is funny. Yeah, I have a feeling you're not the only person who's going to say that. Wade Vatican is also watching as well. Good evening. This is the Facebook Live portion of the podcast. And I know I said a few weeks ago, actually it might have been 2 weeks ago, that I was taking a little bit of a break from doing the live shows. Well, I figured this was a holiday weekend. I'll have Monday off. I'm actually doing this live show on Sunday evening for those who are listening on the download. And I figured, why not do it? I still have the week to just kind of do whatever. Oh, Carlos says number one, Star Wars. I will say the parody of Star Wars did make my list. Chad Sanders is watching as well. Here's a post for Derek to say live on Facebook. Well, there you go, Chad. I have said your post. So comedies, believe it or not, those who maybe know a little bit about me, because I've heard some people say that they don't think that I'm a fan of comedies, and that's quite the opposite. I like a good drama. I love a good sci-fi film. I love a good adventure film, but I love to laugh just like everyone else does. And my list kind of ranges from the 80s era of comedy. I grew up watching movies like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Major League, Ferris Bueller, films of that era. And then, of course, there's some newer ones as well that some have other genres, but I'd still classify them as comedies because it's a big integral part of what their story is and the tone of the film. So Wade says, Spaceballs. Oh, shit, there goes the planet. I haven't seen Spaceballs in such a long time, and it's a really fun movie. Easily one of my favorite parodies that I've ever seen. So, yeah, I don't have too much to say as far as things, updates on the podcast, because things are just still going to keep going. Still no word on baseball. So whether it's doing these top 10 shows every other week or once a month like I had originally planned, the podcast is still, it's very open and fluid right now. I will say next week's show is going to be strictly an interview that I'll touch on. For those who are listening on the download, you'll hear about it in the close of the show, but it was actually a really informative interview and went nearly an hour. So that's going to be, the first time in almost a year that the episode will be strictly an interview. But it's really good, so hopefully you guys will listen to that. But that's for next week. Let's get into my list for top 10 comedies. I will preface this by saying there are a ton of honorable mentions, more so than I have for any other list that I've done, whether it's on this show or on the Daily Diamond. So, honorable mentions, Beverly Hills Cop, released in 1984. Really funny movie. My favorite Eddie Murphy movie. I know Coming to America was really good too, but the classic Banana in the Tailpipe gets me every time when it comes to this movie. I love Beverly Hills Cop. Shaun of the Dead, really good horror film and also a very funny movie. It had, to me, the perfect blend of the genre. It's not just a great comedy, but it's a great film in general, and I love Shaun of the Dead. I like Hot Fuzz a little bit more, and that's on my honorable mentions as well. But Shaun of the Dead is really good. The Naked Gun, I haven't seen it too many times, and I haven't seen it since I was a kid. But the quote that always stands out to me, and I use this every now and then, is that it's not goodbye. I'm just never going to see you again. I absolutely love that quote. Office Space, it's a cult classic. Everything from the copier or the fax machine, I can't remember exactly what it was, being destroyed with the gangster music playing in the background. The stapler bit. Lumbergh, of course, is probably my favorite character in that whole movie. Yeah, I'm going to need you to come in on Saturday, okay? Something, lines like that were just so dry. I absolutely loved them. Airplane, the original parody movie. I will say I didn't see this movie until I think I was in high school. And I had already watched Unsolved Mysteries, so seeing Robert Stack in an actual movie was really cool, because I only knew him as the Unsolved Mysteries guy. But, the clever lines like, I am serious and don't call me Shirley, and the whole, older lady speaking jive is absolutely genius. Idiocracy would be on there too, and it's funny because that it's kind of a precursor. This because it was released in 2006. It was kind of a precursor of what Society would become, nearly 15 years later, which is kind of crazy. Dazed and Confused, released in 1993. I guess I should have mentioned that the preface behind this list, and also to make it a little more challenging, is you can only pick one. Like, say you have two comedies that are released in 1985. You can only pick one. The other can be an honorable mention, but when it comes to top 10, only one comedy per year. Dazed and Confused, Matthew McConaughey. That's all I'll say. It was all right, all right, all right. Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I mentioned, watching comedies from that era that I loved. That era, like 84 to 88 or 89, was such to me, the golden age of comedies, specifically. I mean, I love movies from that era in general, but so many great comedies from that era, and we'll get to some more of them here in a bit. And my other is Austin Powers' International Man of Mystery, the original one. The sequel was really funny too, but Austin Powers essentially is a parody of James Bond, and I thought those movies were hilarious growing up. I actually haven't seen any of them since I was in college, because Goldmember came out in 2002, I believe, 2002 or 2003, because I was still in high school at the time, and it was, to me, the worst of the three. But I love the original two. They have so many funny and stupid quotes, and to me, Mike Myers' career, it kind of floundered after that. But let's see what's going on in the chat before I get into my top 10. Let's see. My mother is watching. Thank you for watching, Mom. Wade, Trading Places, another one that Eddie came out with in 84. Yeah, that's another good one, too. Bill Lyons has joined. He says, hey, kids. Yeah, Wade, don't forget to put the new cover sheet on your TPS reports. Bill Lyons, Austin almost made my list, hit with a huge splash with our age group. Yeah, I mean, people still quote those movies. I do regret that they never made a fourth one. Oh, where are my laser beams? They're on the Ill-Tempered Sea Bass. So if you can find those, you'll find your laser beams, Bill. So let's dive into the top 10. My number 10 is Semi-Pro, starring Will Ferrell and Woody Harrelson. This was released in 2008. I didn't appreciate this movie when it first came out. Like, I thought it was funny, but it wasn't anywhere like Anchorman or even, some of his movies that came out after that. But where I gained the appreciation for this movie was when I started working in minor league baseball, because this is such an accurate portrayal of what minor league sports is like, with the goofy promotions, with the wacky characters. It's kind of scary accurate watching it now. And like I said, it's a movie that I appreciate now more so than I did when it came out. I didn't see it in theaters. I remember getting it on DVD and watching it on some weekend at like 1 o'clock in the morning when, I was still living with my parents. But yeah, Semi-Pro is a fun movie. A funny story that has to do with Semi-Pro. So Tommy Thrall, who is currently the broadcaster for the Cincinnati Reds, he used to be our broadcaster from, I think, 2012 to 2018 was his last season. This had to have been in 2015 because I think that was when we were all going through a huge Semi-Pro phase. There's a scene in the movie when Jackie Moon, who is Will Ferrell's character, wrestles a bear in a cage match. So we decide to have some fun at Tommy's expense. So we're playing the Mobile Bay Bears, and Tommy's just broadcasting, in his booth, and we're kind of doing our thing with all the video board stuff and what we normally do on field. Well, we had this idea that if the Wahoos were to score 10 runs, then we would make this fake promotion that Tommy Thrall would wrestle a live bear at the next day's game. So we actually made a graphic for it first we went into Tommy's booth, asked him to turn around and so we could take his picture. So we did. He didn't think anything of it. And anyway, we cut his picture out, put him next to a bear, and we actually put it on the video board and made the announcement that, hey, if the Blue Wahoos score 10 runs at tomorrow's game, broadcaster Tommy Thrall will wrestle a live bear. We didn't score 10 runs, but it was still a funny story. Number 9 is Deadpool, released in 2016. The hype for this movie was pretty high because of all that Ryan Reynolds had to go through in order to make this happen, which I'm still convinced that he leaked the test footage, by the way. But that's a discussion for another time. This movie was so freaking funny because Deadpool is famous for breaking the fourth wall. And I was concerned that they were going to overkill it, but they did just enough in order for it to work. But everything, from breaking the fourth wall to the X-Men jokes to the music to the one-liners was so freaking funny. One of my favorite parts of the movie is when I can't remember the character's name, but essentially does like the superhero landing where she lands like on her knee and on her fist, and Deadpool's like, watch for the superhero landing, she's gonna do the superhero landing. Like, little fourth wall references like that to me are so good. I loved everything about this movie. The sequel was really good too, but I think the original just edges it out for me. My number 8 is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, released in 1987, starring the great Steve Martin and John Candy. I watch this every Thanksgiving morning. And it's funny because this is one of the rare Thanksgiving-centric stories. You think of comedies and other movies that are set around holidays. There are a lot of Christmas movies. There are a lot of 4th of July movies. Not really any that take place during Thanksgiving or have, a Thanksgiving-centric story because, Steve Martin's character is trying to make it home in time for Thanksgiving. And John Candy's character, those two meet, and then hilarity just ensues because you put those two together and it was absolute magic. Their comedy styles meshed extremely well together with Steve Martin's dry humor and John Candy being wacky John Candy. Of course, my favorite scene from this movie is when Steve Martin is trying to rent a car and he goes off on the lady at the front desk with just F-bomb after F-bomb after F-bomb. But it's so well done. And then she retorts back at him where she's like, do you have your original slip? And he goes, no, I do not. And she said, well, that sucks for you. And he goes, why? And she says, you're effed. and just the timing of it was so freaking hilarious. And the scenes with them in the hotel, sleeping in the same bed together was so freaking funny. I enjoy watching this every Thanksgiving morning. It was one of my favorite comedies, because my parents were a little lenient with letting me watch comedies from that era, and it was absolutely one of my favorites. Let's see what's going on in the chat here. Let's see. Oh yeah, Bill, the meeting of the league folding. Wade, borderline comedy / action / comic book. Yeah, it had other elements, but comedy was a big part of why that movie was so good. Bill, Pool would definitely make the list. Had to think hard, but had to put it in the action category. PTA, yes, that one scene though, the one. Yeah, Wade, those aren't pillows. That movie was so good. Number 7 is The Hangover, released in 2009. This was arguably my favorite, and this is going to be a topic that I discuss on the Daily Diamond at some point, but this is one of my favorite opening night theater experiences that I've ever been to, because it was like me and 5 or 6 friends went. Luckily, we were able to find seats where we could all sit together because the theater was slammed. And people were laughing before the movie even started, because you think of that teaser that came out with Mike Tyson singing In the Air Tonight, and then he knocks out Bradley Cooper. And you're like, what in the world is going on? And this movie is just a huge train wreck, but in such a great way. My one gripe of this is that they made sequels to it, because I did not like either of the sequels that came out afterwards. To me, Hangover 2 was essentially the same movie with just set in a different location. And then the third one, they tried something completely different, which I give them credit for, but it just didn't work. Like, this was meant to be a one-off comedic story of a friend getting lost in Vegas and friends just going through everything from dealing with Mike Tyson and his pet tiger to a naked Asian dude jumping out of a trunk. Oh, it was so funny. And we laughed nonstop during this movie. And I haven't watched it in maybe at least 6 or 7 years. I've seen it since it came out on DVD, but I haven't watched it in several years. But one of my favorite movie-going experiences, and I didn't put this in my honorable mentions, but Superbad would be another good, comedic theater experience for me, because it was just so hilarious. Oh yeah, he knocked out Galifianakis. Yeah, that was that's my bad. So thank you for correcting me, Wade. Yeah, Carlos, as much as I like The Hangover, it's not one of those movies that I have a desire to watch over and over just once in a while. Yeah, I would agree with that. It's like I said, I haven't seen it probably since 2012, 2013 maybe. It's been a long time. Bill, Mike Tyson, next Avengers villain. If you've seen the videos of him training for a possible comeback, he's still scary as hell. Fundin drops in his favorite comedies: Animal House, Caddyshack, Back to School, Slapshot, Sleeper, Polyester, Crybaby, The Jerk, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I forgot that... Yeah, mentioning the Galifianakis thing, I completely forgot about that part of it. It was Bradley Cooper who had the actual exchange with Mike Tyson, talking about how big of a fan he was. So, yeah, my confusion on that. But let's go back to my list here. 6 is Ghostbusters, released in 1984, and I do count it as a comedy. It does have horror elements in it, but this is, my friend Wally has deemed this the perfect film. And it's tough to argue that, because the script was really clever for the time. And it's got such funny lines like, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria, or that's a big Twinkie from Ernie Hudson's character. So freaking good. The actors are great. This has an all-star cast from that era, and they all deliver. Everything from the dialogue to the situations, or Bill Murray's character saying, "We came, we saw, we kicked its ass." Things like that are just so funny and quotable. I love Ghostbusters. It sucks that the new one was delayed a year, because a podcast that I was actually really looking forward to doing this summer is I was going to do a Ghostbusters roundtable leading into Afterlife. Kind of like what we did with Star Wars last year, where we did kind of a retrospective on the entire franchise and then come back and review the new one. I was wanting to do that with Afterlife, but sadly we will have to wait until next year for that. My number 5 is Spaceballs, released in 1987. Mel Brooks is a comedic genius. Everything from Blazing Saddles to Young Frankenstein to Robin Hood Men in Tights. But Spaceballs is my favorite of all of them. And yeah, it being a knockoff of Star Wars has something to do with that. And some people have asked me, were you offended by Spaceballs because you're a fan of Star Wars? And I'm like, no, I love the parody stuff. There's so much great Star Wars parody stuff out there, from what Family Guy did to Robot Chicken to the Weird Al song, The Saga Begins, and him essentially making a knockoff of The Phantom Menace as the music video. I love seeing stuff like that. I think it's hilarious. And Spaceballs is at the top of that list when it comes to... It knocks off some other sci-fi stuff, too. There's a scene that parodies Alien. But Star Wars, to me, is what's at the forefront. Everything from Pizza the Hut to Lone Star being a knockoff of Han Solo, Barf being a knockoff of Chewbacca, Dark Helmet played brilliantly by Rick Moranis. Probably my favorite quote from that movie is the big confrontation that he has with Lone Star, and he says, "I am your father's brother's nephew's cousin's former roommate." And Lone Star is like, "Really? What does that make us?" Absolutely nothing. It's funny. It's really funny stuff. And of course, Pizza the Hut, and he died because he ate himself to death. Just such funny stuff. And Mel Brooks playing Yogurt, the parody of Yoda. It's a shame that we never got the sequel, Spaceballs 2, The Search for More Money. But man, Spaceballs is a phenomenal movie. Let's see. Wade, yes. R.I.P. Harold Ramis. Bill Ramis always stole the scene. Yeah, Carlos, I'm really hoping Afterlife is going to be good too. And yes, Bill, you can be on that round table, my friend. Wade combing the desert. Yeah, that was probably my favorite scene of the entire movie. Let's see, Chad, how much money do I have to pay to be on the Ghostbusters roundtable? I grew up with the movie. It's a partially responsible for who I am as a person. I have to be there. Yeah, well, first of all, Chad, you can absolutely be a part of it. It's funny because, I know of so many people who want to be a part of that. So what we might have to do is do a 2-parter and just have, 2 different sets of people. I mean, I don't want to rehash the same discussion, or who knows, I might just say screw it, and just if we have 10 people, we have 10 people. We'll see what happens. Bill, we ain't found shit. That quote was so freaking funny. Yeah, Carlos, I got your list here, so we'll I'll actually save that and I'll read that here in a bit. But my number 4 is easily my favorite Will Ferrell movie of all time, and that is Anchorman: The Legend of Ron Burgundy, released in 2004. It's crazy to think that movie came out that long ago, because I think it came out in December of '04, so I was a freshman in college at that time. I missed the theatrical run, but it was a huge hit on DVD when it came out. And I remember watching this movie for the first time, and I could not breathe during certain parts of it because I was laughing at just the sheer ridiculousness of it. Of course, the highlight is, to me, the showdown in the parking lot with all the news teams. I can't remember the actual station name, but the public broadcasting group, or public broadcasting is taking a break from its pledge drive to come kick some ass. And Ben Stiller is like, the streets will be covered with Burgundy's blood. It's just so ridiculous. And then, Steve Carell, his character was, to me, one of the two characters that made that movie. Where they're like, Brick, where did you get a grenade? I don't know. And then he just gets a trident out of nowhere and he kills a guy with it. And just, it's so freaking funny. And then, of course, there's so many iconic scenes from that movie. The jazz flute is one of my favorites. Hey, Aqualung. And Baxter, even though I hated to see it because I love dogs, but Baxter getting punted by Jack Black and Ron Burgundy screaming through the phone, "The bad man punted Baxter." Oh my God, that movie is so freaking great. Yeah, Bill, I'm sure I'll do one at some point as well. Have to, right? Yeah, we can double dip. What's the matter, Colonel Sanders? Chicken? Oh yeah, Carlos, one of my favorite parts is the watching Spaceballs the video. What am I looking at? You're looking at now. I forgot about that part. Yeah, that was hilarious too. Number 3 is Major League, released in 1989. One of my favorite movies of all time. And one that this is another tradition for me because I watch this the night before every Blue Wahoo's opening day just to get in the right mind frame of baseball. And if you've never seen Major League, you've got to go out of your way to watch it. It is so freaking funny. It earns its R rating, but it's so funny with characters, like Corbin Bernstein's Roger Dorn, Charlie Sheen's Rick Vaughn, Pedro Serrano, Jake Taylor, Harris, the aging pitcher. So many great quotes, and of course, Wesley Snipes, Willie Mays Hayes, and Wesley Snipes I don't think ever did comedy after that, and he's the source of some of the greatest quotes. There's when he makes the basket catch in the outfield and Lou Brown, the manager, says, "Nice catch, Hayes, don't ever effing do it again." I'm trying to think because there's so many great quotes from that movie. It's where I think during spring training when Hayes is trying to, hit, he wants to be a power hitter, but Lou's telling him, with your speed, you need to put the ball on the ground. And he says, for every ball you hit in the air, you owe me 20 push-ups. And before that, he says, well, you may run like Mays, but you hit like shit. Stuff like that, oh my God, is just so freaking great. And there are so many other inappropriate moments in that movie. There are sequels to it, but to me, they don't hold a candle to the original. I know there was talk a while back before the actor who played Lou Brown passed away that they were looking at doing a true Major League 3 where they were going to bring a new crop of players in. And I think Charlie Sheen was going to be like the old veteran like Harris was in the original Major League. And Serrano was going to be like a coach or something, or Jake Taylor was going to be a coach. But then when the actor who played Lou Brown passed away, I think that put all talks to that, because you would have had to have brought everyone back in order to do it. The only thing I will say that I prefer about Major League 2 if they had incorporated the Jack Parkman character from that movie into part 1, perfect movie. It would have been great. I love Major League. It was so... Oh, Wade says, Roger Dorn, what a prick. See, but the thing is that Roger Dorn played that role so freaking well that you had to love him for it. You had to love him for it. Let's see, actually... yeah, I've still got Carlos's list. So the thing with this whole new Facebook Live thing is that I can't go back to the very beginning and read comments. Like, it cuts off after a certain period of time. But they seem to have improved it a lot. Like, you still can't go back to the very beginning, but it's not like you can, you can't see past, like, the past 10 comments. They've improved that, thankfully. My number 2 is The Big Lebowski. I mean, I've said a lot about this movie on the podcast, but I love Jeff Bridges. I love John Goodman's character. I love Steve Buscemi's character. The plot is a little bit out there, but honestly, I don't think it's too much out there compared to other movies. But everything from the one-liners, especially from Walter, you want a tow, I can get you a tow. I can have you a tow by 3 o'clock. Or, over the line, or John Turturro's character. He's like, you flash a piece out on the lanes, I'll take it from you and stick it up your ass and pull the trigger till it goes click. Even Philip Seymour Hoffman, he was great in this movie. Rest in peace to Philip Seymour Hoffman. I could do a whole discussion about The Big Lebowski, and honestly, that would make a fantastic roundtable. It came out in 98, so there's not like, a big anniversary of it coming up anytime soon, because 2018 would have been the 20-year anniversary. So let's see, 2023 would be the 25-year anniversary. So, who knows? I might do one at some point anyway, but I love The Big Lebowski. And, of course, number 1, it had to be Clerks. It's my number 2 all-time favorite movie, so it's got to be my all-time favorite comedy. What can I say about it that I have not already said? It's such a relatable movie. It's the movie that really inspired me to want to be a filmmaker. Everything from, a lot of the comments I won't say because they're very inappropriate, but there's I'll say, and Bill will get this, the number 37. I will say that. That's all I'll say about that. But yeah, that's my top 10 comedies. I feel like it's a pretty solid list. This is one, like, clearly from my honorable mentions, I could do a top 20. Even from, the same year. I mean, Beverly Hills Cop and Ghostbusters both came out in 84. So I would obviously prefer Ghostbusters to that, but still, I really enjoyed doing this list. Wade, the dude does not abide in putting Big Lebowski ahead of Major League. Bill, in a row? Oh, man, I might watch Clerks again tonight. I haven't seen it in a while, but I love that movie. And Carlos, yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man. Oh, yeah, Wade, only 3 actors to appear in all 3 movies: Harry Doyle, Pedro Serrano, and Roger Dorn. Because, Major League 3 is when they went back to the minors, which I don't hate that movie. I actually prefer it to Major League 2, I think. I haven't seen either of those in forever, but what can you do? So let's get to everyone's list here. We'll start off with Carlos Longoria. I've actually got a couple of lists here in the chat. Carlos Longoria, his honorable mentions are The Sandlot and Dumb and Dumber. Number 10, Ghostbusters. 9, Zack and Miri. 8, Employee of the Month, starring Dane Cook. 7, Christmas Vacation. Yeah, Christmas Vacation would be up there for me as well. It would have been an honorable mention. 6, Uncle Buck. 5, Office Space. 4, Ernest Goes to Jail. I forgot about the Ernest movies, but that is the best one. 3, Shaun of the Dead. 2, Step Brothers. It's the effing Catalina wine mixer. And do we just become best friends? Yup. And number 1 is Spaceballs. That's a really solid list. Terry MacGyver. Number 10, Pineapple Express. Number 9, The Wedding Singer. 8, Mouse Hunt. 7, The Producers. 6, The Court Jester. 5, Gremlins. 4, Ghostbusters. 3, Spaceballs. 2, The Great Outdoors. And number 1 is The Burbs. Oh yeah, Bill, million fine-looking women in the world do, but they don't all bring you lasagna at work. Most of them just cheat on you. Very philosophical words by Silent Bob. And Fundin tells me to watch Sleeper tonight. I see you left the trailer. I'll check that out after we wrap up the podcast here. Kentucky Fried Movie, another honorable mention. That's such a fantastic title. I love that. So let me scroll through. I got to find Brandon Rutledge's list because he left it on the original event post. And of course, I had it. Oh, here it is. His honorable mentions: Napoleon Dynamite, Dodgeball, A True Underdog Story, Kung Fu Hustle, all came out the same year as my number 5 pick. So his number 10 is Kung Pao Enter the Fist, released in 2002. That's what he meant. Stars above. 9 is Shrek, released in 2001. 8, Young Frankenstein, released in 74. 7, Ghostbusters, released in 84. 6, Clue, released in 1985. I love Clue. Clue's a fun movie. 5, Shrek 2, released in 2004. 4 is Rush Hour, released in 1998. 3, Robin Hood Men in Tights, released in 93. 2, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, released in 1975. And number 1, Spaceballs, released in 1987. Really good list, Brandon. I like that one a lot. Man, Carlos, now I want tots. Might have to walk over to Sonic and get some tots. I've got a Sonic that's like a block down from me, so might have to do that. Let's see. So now going to everyone's list here that they left here on Facebook. Anastriano, I would like to submit for your consideration My Life. Well, make it into a movie, and maybe I will. Maybe I'll list it. But no, in all seriousness, you shouldn't be so hard on yourself. Wade Vatican, so many tough choices to make to narrow it down to one per year. However, I do have several. He has Caddyshack, released in 1980. National Lampoon's Animal House, released in 1978. Ferris Bueller's Day Off, released in 86. And Monty Python and the Holy Grail, released in 1975. Bob Barrett, number 10, A Hard Day's Night, released in 1964. 9, Young Frankenstein, released in 74. 8, Beetlejuice, released in 88. 7, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, which was released in 1989. 6 is Duck Soup, released in 1933. I saw that on a lot of lists today when I was looking up, like top 20 or top 50 best comedies. That was high up on a lot of lists. Number 5, Good Morning Vietnam, released in 1987. Number 4, Ghostbusters, released in 84. Galaxy Quest in 99. Never Give Up, Never Surrender. 2, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, released in 1975. And number 1 is Arthur, released in 1981. Carlos, chili cheese tots from Sonic are the best. And Terry MacGyver's honorable mention is Rumble in the Bronx. I've actually never seen that movie. Let's see. Chris Davis, honorable mention, Airplane and Hot Shots. Hot Shots was released in 91. His number 5, Spaceballs. Number 4, Top Secret, released in 1984. 3, Hot Fuzz, released in 2007. 2, Monty Python and Quest for the Holy Grail, 1975. And his number 1 is Blazing Saddles, released in 1974. Bill Lyons in chronological order because we all need some stability in these times. Beverly Hills Cop, 1984. The 90s are super hard. I guess I need to try and exclude kids' movies as a separate category and try to not let Smith win every tie. Grumpy Old Men, released in 93. Coneheads was so close. Beverly Hills Ninja, released in 97. Gone Fishin', a close second. Basketball, released in 98. Analyze This, released in 99. He notes that American Pie feels more coming of age. Super Troopers, released in 2001. 40-Year-Old Virgin, released in 2005. Clerks 2 in 2006. Forgetting Sarah Marshall in 2008. And Get Him to the Greek, released in 2010. I have not seen Get Him to the Greek probably since it came out. And I've only seen it one time, but I remember it being good. Samantha Owens, Bridesmaids, The Lovebirds, Mean Girls, War on Everyone, and What a Girl Wants. I also know that, I believe that was a famous song named What a Girl Wants as well. Chad Sanders, he is rounding out our list here. In no particular order, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, Blazing Saddles, Tropic Thunder, Top Secret, Batman, 1966, totally a comedy. Fight me. I'll actually not fight you on that. The 1966 is totally a comedy. The Birdcage, The Great Dictator, Hail Caesar. That's a good one, too. That one I feel like is a little underrated. I saw that movie for the first time, I think, last year. I really liked it. Wayne's World, another classic, and Sorry to Bother You. And he actually puts, honestly, now I feel like Tommy Boy should have made the list. Yeah, Tommy Boy, I like it, but I haven't seen it that many times, believe it or not. So I didn't have that sentimental value with Tommy Boy, but I do like it. It's actually a very funny movie. Let's see. Bill Lyons, Ugh, forgot Good Morning Vietnam 2. Carlos Longoria, I just bought Top Secret on DVD from the pawn shop a few months ago. I love going to my local pawn shop. DVDs are $1 and Blu-ray are $3. And Batman, sometimes you just can't get rid of a bomb. And Bill, but what does a girl need? I don't know. I don't know the next lyric to the song, so you've kind of stumped me on that one. But all in all, really good list and good turnout for the live show. I'm actually quite surprised. Let me ask you guys this, because we got a little bit of time, and then I'm going to call it a show as far as the live portion goes. Do you prefer Sunday evening shows or shows on Tuesday nights? I have no real preference, because I may still have to do the live shows in order to have a weekly show, because I think things with work are going to calm down as far as just the sheer amount of stuff that we're doing. So I should be good to do live shows still and not be burned out and want to kill myself. So before I close out, if a couple of you guys want to let me know what you guys prefer as far as, because I have no problem doing Sunday evening shows around this time, like 6 p.m. That way it's not too terribly late. I also don't mind doing Tuesday shows at, 8 o'clock. It really doesn't matter. But, yeah, I think that's going to be where I call it a show. Carlos says, either is fine with me. I'm usually home at this hour either way, usually. Oh, Wade, a favorite ritual of mine during ball games the last few seasons is doing the whole dialogue between Tommy Boy and the waitress. And Terry MacGyver, either or works for me. So I'll think on it, and we'll see what happens. But because like I said, I really don't care either way. But I'll think on it, and I will keep you guys in the loop, because I really enjoy the live portion of this podcast. So I do want to keep doing it, just because it's a highlight of the week. This and doing the live version of Nerd Cave Retro is a lot of fun as well. So Yeah, for the those who are watching live, Fundin, it's COVID-19 depression. Get over it. I mean, I've been over it, Fundin. You don't have to worry about me. So, but I appreciate it. But I think that's going to do it for the live portion of the podcast. So for those who were watching live on Facebook, thank you guys for tuning in. For those who are watching or listening on the download, stay tuned for my conversation with actress/model, writer, and producer Victoria Vertuga. She's here talking about her latest web series, Disgraced, which is kind of a satire on the film and television industry. It's actually on YouTube and Vimeo right now, so if you guys want to check that out, just search for Disgraced the series, and you guys will be able to find it. But that's going to do it for the live portion of the podcast. Thank you guys, and stick around for my conversation with Victoria Vertuga.